So inventories, do we all know what an inventory is first and foremost? Does anybody here not know what an inventory is? If you don't, put your hand up. Do you know what the inventory is used for? What is the purpose of the inventory? Sam, let me pick on you, I know your name. What do we use the inventory for? What's the purpose?
To compare the state of the property and the contents, from what the people that don't move in, to what the state of the contents are.
Okay, so what happens if you don't have an inventory? Gentleman behind. For deposit damages. So is it true then when a landlord says to me, or to these guys at the front really, because these are the ones that put the application to the landlord, ask them what it is that they need. Is it true when they say, I don't need an inventory, the property's unfurnished? Does anybody here believe that you don't need an inventory if the property's unfurnished? So what we say to landlords is, so do you not mind if the tenants take all of your internal doors when they leave? Do you not mind if the tenants have painted the bedroom, number 2 bedroom, gloss black on the walls? Is that okay with you? They've not damaged anything and there's no furniture, but it wouldn't be okay because it will still have a cost to you to repair or replace these items. Inventories, I actually would go as far as to say, if you are taking deposits and you are not having an inventory, you're pretty much wasting your time. I'm being honest. The only thing you can attempt to claim from that deposit would be rent arrears, because you have no evidence of anything, any damage, any changes, anything that's not rent arrears. So if you are taking deposits, please make sure you are carrying out an inventory and ensure that you are working to the requirements of the deposit registration providers. Because remember guys, we've had deposit regulations in play now. Housing Act 2004 first brought them out, became mandatory in 2007 that you had to now legally register a tenant's deposit on an AST. And if we cannot come to an agreement between a tenant and a landlord, what we then have to do is send it to an adjudicator who's never seen your property, never met you, doesn't know that you're a good landlord, doesn't know that you provided a great property to this tenant, and they don't know the tenant neither. So what they will make a judgment on is merely the evidence that is placed in front of them. And that will be an inventory and a checkout. And if you have one of those things missing, you're not going to be awarded the charges that you are most likely entitled to. Deposit registration and the law deems a deposit as the tenant's money always. And so it's down to the landlord to prove they are entitled to a claim on that deposit. It's not down to the tenant to prove that you are not. Does that make sense? We've had some real silly cases with inventories where I feel a landlord should have won an apportionment of money, but they haven't. I'm going to give you just a very small, quick example. A shower cubicle, walk-in shower cubicle, it has a door, would we all agree? Do doors have handles? 9 times out of 10, you would think so. Because the handle wasn't listed on the inventory and the handle was missing off the door, they didn't award the handle replacement for the door because the handle wasn't listed and there wasn't a photograph showing there was a handle. So the point I'm trying to make here is they need to be very, very detailed. They need to be, even if you've got a blank room, even if you've got an empty room, you've still got to document the carpets, the skirting boards, the wall, the ceiling, the light fittings, the window, the curtains, anything that's in that room. It can still be quite an in-depth document. And you also must make sure that it's factual. There's no point going in and saying, this is great because I'm the landlord and everything's fantastic and it's all excellent and it's all brand new, if it's not. So firstly, have a system to follow. If you're doing these things yourself, landlords can do their own inventories. I'd recommend that they don't because they're deemed as a little bit biased. So I'd always recommend third party, but you can do your own if you know what you're doing. So firstly, have a system to follow. Photos. Let's go back 10 years, like Sally said previously. When we were doing this 10 years ago, when I first started with Sally, we didn't need photos. There was no need to have photos. It was just a really good, detailed, written description. But now there's smartphones, there's iPads, there's this, there's that, there's the other. It's so easy to include photos into your inventories and checkouts. And you can't really argue with a photo of something. If there's a big stain on the carpet, you can't argue with that. So photos. You need to make sure that your tenant signs the inventory. Because if you have an inventory that's unsigned and you can't provide evidence that you provided this to the tenant, gave them the relevant time to amend or make any changes to it, then it could become invalid at the end of term, and again, not worth either what you've paid for it or the time that you've spent carrying it out. APIP is the approved professionals inventory providers, which we took a course on and became members of just to better ourselves and to make sure that we're up to current standards. We actually outsource ours. No, we don't. We did outsource ours, but then we stopped doing that because we had such high volume of inventories, checkouts and inspections. We employed a full-time clerk who carries out all of ours for us, but she's up to APIP standards, so she knows what she's doing. I've just explained to you the purpose and what an inventory is designed to do, and I've also just explained to you that there is no deposit negotiations to take place if you don't have them, because you have no evidence. And there's one word that I will always put in a landlord's mind when dealing with deposit disbursements is the word betterment. Have everybody heard of betterment? A landlord is not allowed to be in a better position than they were at the start of the tenancy. So, for example, if there's a carpet and it's got an average lifespan of 10 years, the tenant's been in there 5 years, it was down 2 years prior to that, it's had 7 years of its expected lifespan. The tenant has put 20 iron marks or iron burns all over the carpet. You can't charge them for a new carpet. But what you can do is charge them the difference for those 3 years that you would have left. So for example, if a carpet that you were going to buy was £100, you'd be able to charge them 30. Does that make sense? You have to apportion the amount that you're claiming from the tenant's deposit to be fair and to not put you in a position of betterment. Any questions on inventories? I told you this really isn't scary. Okay, excellent. Yes, of course you can, sir.
Therefore, in terms of deposits, what percent of deposits should you take because the deposit might not cover?
Absolutely. Well, that's a really good question, because guess what? We've got another new piece of legislation coming in called the tenant fee ban that we as agents absolutely love. At the moment, there's no limit on the amount of deposit that you can take. It is recommended that you don't go over 2 months, purely because you could be deemed as creating a premium lease, which is very complex and I won't bore you about it, but it could change the goalpost if you take more than 2 months. But with the new piece of legislation that we think will be coming out later next year, they are putting a cap on the amount of money that you can take as a deposit. The guidelines at the moment, they're saying in the proposed bill, is that it will be 6 weeks. But we actually think, and I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, that it will probably be reduced to about a month maximum. Now, our argument on behalf of you guys as landlords, on behalf of all our agencies, it's just not enough. Because how many tenants don't pay their last month's rent? Oh, you've got my deposit, just take it from there. Well, no, because your deposit is for damages, cleaning, things that are, you know, normal in some tenancies. If we've just got 1 month's rent, we're very, very limited on what we can charge. So at the moment, I think most agents take an average of 6 weeks, or I believe we take a month's rent plus 100. That's something we've always done. But again, more legislation, so this time next year I'll be telling you a whole new story, I'm sure. Okay, so on to something a little bit more...
One thought as well on the inventory.
Yes.
When people leave,
yes,
it's always a good idea to check that things work. Because if the bulbs are there, but they're all dead, they're going to be replaced. Or if the cooker doesn't work, washing machine or whatever. Absolutely, really valid point. And also we haven't mentioned, but I've told you the importance of an inventory. The checkout report is equally as important, because one without the other, you've still got no claim. Because you might have the evidence of what it was like before, but without the checkout report, you haven't got the evidence of what it was like after. So you need both documents to put a claim in, but very good point, Garth.
And bulbs. Can you charge tenants if when the tenant moved in, all of the lights in the house had light bulbs? Can you charge them for bulbs when they move out? Absolutely. Why not? You can. And you will win that claim because they should replace the light bulbs. I remember when light bulbs were like 30p, you know, them screwing things that you do, but now they're like £6 each. If you've got a house that's got, you know, 10, 12, 15 lights, we are now at £60, £80. Why should that be your responsibility if you provided the property with light bulbs?